Okay, welcome back, everyone. No worries, Rachel. Welcome back. Welcome back. We just started the live stream, so I'll get started with our class. So this class that I'm going to share with you now as part of this course is titled Identifying Cravings, Cultivating Non-Craving and Analysis of the Mind. This is where you're going to learn how to go in and actually identify your cravings, desires, attachments, and how to eliminate them. In terms of your development in the tools and techniques that you need on the path to enlightenment, meditation is a real priority, but this is the second one, right? You really need to build this skill to be able to look inward, be reflective and introspective, to be able to identify your cravings, because this path to enlightenment is to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, that longing and yearning. But how could you ever eliminate them if you didn't know how to identify them? So I'm going to teach you how to do this, and then I'm going to teach you how to go in and almost surgically remove these from the mind. And we'll do a little activity, if you guys would like, at the end of this, to be able to see if you guys would like to practice, to be able to get to the point where you can develop this skill. Those of you guys here and those of you guys online, we can do a little bit of a group activity together. So first, let's just kind of revisit what a craving, desire, attachment is for those of you guys that haven't studied this before. What a craving, desire, attachment is this is that mental longing and strong eagerness, the chasing after the objects of your affection. This is what's causing the discontentedness. So in terms of harmonious relationships, when you're being hostile and bitter and harsh, yes, that's the anger that's arising, but the only reason why it's arising is because of craving. If it wasn't because of craving, the anger wouldn't actually exist. So you're going to need to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments in your relationships in order for you to be able to get to the point where you can have harmonious relationships. So understanding what a craving, desire what a craving, desire, attachment is really important. That it's this longing and yearning. It's the mind pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection, wanting things to be a certain way. So in terms of relationships, wanting mom and dad to be a certain way, wanting brothers and sisters to be a certain way, wanting boyfriends or girlfriends to be a certain way. If they were just this way, everything would be perfect. But that's just the mind craving them to be a particular way. They're not that way, but the mind wants them to be that way. And that's why when you're not getting what you want in your relationships, the mind becomes discontent. So you're going to need to be able to identify these, but first, in order to identify them, you need to know what they are. So this craving, desire, attachment is the problem that is causing discontentedness. This is the cause. Any kind of discontentedness in the past, now, or in the future, it's being caused by craving, desire, attachment. Whether it's your discontentedness or anybody else's discontentedness, it's craving, desire, attachment. Everything you've ever experienced in the past where you've been angry and bitter or harsh, even though you adamantly believe that other people were causing you to be angry, it was actually your own mind all along. Anything that you experience now, it's being caused by craving, desire, attachment. Anything that you may experience in the future, it's craving, desire, attachment, whether it's you or anybody else. It's the first of the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. We talked about those yesterday. It's described in the Four Noble Truths as the cause of discontentedness, and the remedy to craving, desire, attachment is over time gradually building up a breathing mindfulness meditation practice and a practice of generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. This trains your mind to let go, because with craving, desire, attachment, your mind's holding on. So everything that I'm going to teach you now about identifying your attachments and eliminating them from the mind, it's with the understanding that you already have developed a breathing mindfulness meditation practice and a well-developed practice of generosity. If you haven't done that yet, you're going to need to do that. You're going to need to share regularly, daily. The Buddha teaches generosity as a daily practice. That's why, like, throughout Thailand, you'll see like little donation box in a lot of different places. And sometimes people just put 5 baht or 10 baht, just consistently training your mind to let go of money. Don't hold on to it really tightly. Or your time or your effort or your energy, finding ways to just gradually be sharing that little by little by little by little here and there. I see some of you guys even here at the temple, sweeping, taking out the trash, cleaning up the bathroom, just little tiny things, little 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there. This is really helpful for the mind to let go and practicing that generosity. Craving, desire, attachment is the fuel that causes rebirth. This is what determines whether an individual actually is reborn or not. If there is a fire that is burning, it's going to send off sparks, and those sparks are going to be carried by the wind, and it's going to ignite a new fire. So the craving, desire, attachment, this is the fuel that's in your mind that's causing that spark that's leading to the next life, the next consciousness. So by extinguishing the fire, there's no fuel on the fire, and now there won't be a new consciousness that is spawned to produce a next life. So it's the cause or the fuel that is producing the next life. This is what craving, desire, attachment is. So the number one goal in the path to enlightenment is to eliminate discontentedness. If you look at the teachings of the Buddha, he says it constantly over and over and over again. He says, I taught one thing. What is that one thing? The elimination of discontentedness. He talks about this repeatedly in his teachings, that's the goal of this path, is to eliminate discontentedness. So the number one goal is eliminating craving, desire, attachment, because that's the actual cause of this discontentedness. But how could you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment if you didn't know how to identify them? That's what I'm going to teach you. Identifying craving, desire, attachment is the second most important skill that you could develop next to meditation. Breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go of the cravings, desires, attachments, because as you move your mind off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath. And you're also developing mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. It's helping you through the Eightfold Path, through the mental discipline section of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is what's helping to bring your mind to the peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness, the joy. Oftentimes people think it's the meditation that's producing the peacefulness and the joy. It's actually not. What's producing it is the elimination of craving. As you're eliminating these pollutions out of your mind, as you're eliminating each individual craving, that's what's producing the peace and the joy. It just so happens that the meditation is the tool or the technique that's eliminating the cravings, desires, attachments. So as your mind's eliminating its cravings, desires, attachments, that's where it's becoming liberated. It's almost like if you think about like a pickup truck, and you've got a bunch of trash in the back of a pickup truck, and you have this cargo net over the top of the trash. Well, when you start cutting the anchor points of the cargo net, slowly but surely, it's opening up the cargo net, and all this trash is flying out. So that's what you're doing, is you're cutting off and you're eliminating the individual cravings so that the mind can be free. That the mind has this net on top of it. It has all these cravings, desires, attachments that's holding it down and keeping it trapped. And when you're cutting each individual anchor point of the cargo net all the way around, then it's allowing the mind to be free. But your mind can't be free as long as you have these cravings, desires, attachments. So the meditation is just a tool or a technique that helps you to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. The concentration, the focus, the clarity of mind, the deep memory, the peacefulness, the joy, all the qualities that we talk about with enlightenment, this is happening because of the elimination of craving. It's not the tool or the technique that's actually producing it. The tool or techniques that you're using, those are working to eliminate the cravings. And it's when those are eliminated that the mind then becomes more and more liberated, more free of these strong feelings. So this right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration is part of the Eightfold Path. You're practicing the meditation on a consistent, ongoing basis, but then in daily life, you need to be aware of the mind. That as you're going about your day, if you notice any agitation or frustration or irritation arising, that you cut it off and let it go. That's what the mindfulness is, and that's what right effort is. That mindfulness is awareness of mind, and where you notice those bodily sensations, you cut it off and let it go, applying right effort. This is what's going to help bring the mind to the peace and the joy, is a combination of the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, and then using those qualities in daily life to now practice the mindfulness or awareness of mind and applying right effort to cut off and let go. So here I'll teach you guys that you can use these bodily sensations and any kind of discontentedness that you experience as like a red light on the dashboard of your car. When you're experiencing discontentedness, whether it's sadness or anger, frustration or agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure in the mind, this is a red light, like on the dashboard of your car. It's telling you, hey, something's wrong here, right? And if you were driving a car and a red light on the dashboard of your car came on, what would you do? What would you do if your car had a red light on the dashboard of the car? You'd probably pull over, right? And if you had some skills, you'd probably pop the hood and start looking about what's going on in this car, right? You're not going to just keep driving this car. You're going to pull over and investigate what's going on. So the sadness, the anger, the frustration, all those discontent feelings, that's the red light on your dashboard saying, hey, there's something wrong here. Pull over. Start looking inward. Start trying to figure out what your cravings, desires, attachments are. That's what the mind has as its indicator of, hey, something's not happening well here. You're sad, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're agitated. Pull over and check into this and figure this out and start looking inward. And then if you don't have skills, if you don't have the skills to look at your car, you'd probably take your car to a mechanic, right? And you'd probably have this mechanic check it out because you don't have the skills to start pulling wires and start looking at things under the hood. Well, the mechanic is your teacher. Sometimes you're going to need to take your mind to your teacher and you're going to need to say, hey, teacher, I've been really frustrated lately. I think it's these cravings, but I'm not really sure. Can you help me? Right? So you might need to take your car to the mechanic and the mechanic going to help you to understand how to fix this car, right? Your teacher is going to help you to understand what's going on in your mind so that then you can fix it. And slowly but surely you develop the skill or the ability to look inward yourself. So the first 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times, you might need help from your teacher to develop that ability to see your cravings. But over time, you'll develop the skill on your own that you'll be able to look inward. But even still, I've had students sometimes after 6 months, a year, 2 years of studying with me, that they know the teachings pretty well. They'll sometimes contact me and say, David, it's been a while since I've talked to you. Hi, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. This situation happened. I can't figure out my attachments here. Can you help me? Right? And I'll help them, right? So sometimes you need to take your mind to the mechanic, which is your teacher, to get help. But if you develop this skill more and more by working with a teacher, you won't need to do that very frequently because you'll have had that skill on board. Just like you don't have to come to me to learn meditation all the time, but initially you needed to learn meditation with me or you had questions about meditation. But now you know it to a certain degree, you can do it on your own. But with this particular skill, it's like starting over. You need to start from the beginning and build this skill yourself. So let me share with you kind of like what you do when this red light on your dashboard comes on. When this red light on your dashboard comes on, whenever any discontentedness occurs, whether it's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, you cut it off and let it go. You're not thinking about anything in that moment. You notice the bodily sensations, just cut it off and let it go. At that point is not the time to identify your cravings. You're just trying to retrain the mind. When you see this mind about to be getting a conditioned feeling and you say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. And remember, it's not only the painful feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant, but it's the pleasant feelings as well. This one is usually counterintuitive because people are like, hold on a second. I'm cutting off excitement. I'm cutting off the happiness. Remember, this is conditional happiness, conditional excitement. That's what you're cutting off. Where the mind sees it's sunny outside and you start getting excited because it's sunny, or your mom's coming to visit you today. Oh, I'm so excited. Mom's coming. Yay, it's going to be so great. Oh, I can't wait until mom comes. This is conditional excitement. That's what you're cutting off. So that way, when mom leaves, you don't be sad and you don't miss her. Right? You don't allow the mind to get those conditional feelings. Or when it rains outside, if you get happy when it's sunny, then when it rains, you're going to be sad and frustrated, right? Or you get so excited when your bank account gets to a certain balance, then when it drops, you're going to be sad. So when you notice those conditional pleasant feelings, you got to cut those off too, so that then the unconditioned happiness can come into the mind and you can just be happy all the time. Right? But as long as you allow your mind to form conditional happiness, where I am going to get happy because of this, that's conditional happiness. You can't get to the permanent happiness if you hold on to the temporary happiness, right? So whenever you notice a conditional feeling, the mind's about to get a conditioned feeling, you say, nope, not going to let you do that. That's the cutting off and letting go. And it almost just becomes a standard response that you just know how to do that cold. And then you're developing that through your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity. You're developing the ability to cut it off and cut it off and cut it off. And sometimes these feelings are so strong, these cravings are so strong, it's not going to be as simple as just cut it off one time. You're going to be constantly cutting it off and 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 cutting it off. And then finally, 2 days later, 3 days later, you let it go. Right? So even though we say cut it off and let it go, it's not so straightforward sometimes like that. It's really like cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, redirect the mind. And then over time, the mind will finally let it go. Okay, so this is what you do, is the very first step. Whenever you see the red light come on, whenever you see the discontentedness arise, cut it off and let it go. And the sooner you catch it as like a bodily sensation, the better. And then the second thing is, once the mind is calm, once the mind has kind of regained its composure, whether that's a few minutes or a few hours, a few days, a week or two, that's where you start looking inward. You start being reflective. And you start trying to figure out, what is it? What's the craving? What was I craving? There might have been more than one. It's oftentimes not just one early in practice. It can oftentimes be more than one. So you'd like to look inward and be introspective and try to uncover, what are your longing? What are your yearning? What are you wanting? Oh, I got so excited because I'm attached to mom and mom's coming to visit. I'm going to get to eat her cooking. Oh, this is going to be so fun. Oh my goodness. Yes, I can't wait until mom gets here. Oh, mom's flight got canceled. She can't come. Now you're sad, right? This is what the mind does. So by allowing the mind to get those pleasant feelings, you're going to get those painful feelings. So you'd like to look inward and see, what is the attachment? Is it mom? Is it the food? What is it? Right? There's going to be some craving in there. So you'd like to look inward. And sometimes it's more than one. And where you need help, bring your mind to the mechanic. That's where the teacher will help you. So once you identify what's your craving, desire, attachments that led to either the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant, then you move to step 3. You develop a plan to eliminate the specific cravings, desires, attachments that cause this discontentedness to arise, while maintaining your consistent practice of breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. That's what's going to help you to gradually train your mind to eliminate all cravings, desires, attachments. But you'd like to develop a specific plan, okay? And then after you develop that plan, then you repeat this whole process. Let me explain to you this plan, okay? I'm going to give you some examples from my life, okay? So one time, I left my house and I was driving down the road. I was driving my wife's truck and I reached for my phone and I didn't have my phone with me, my mobile phone. And this fear came up in the mind. And right away, I noticed I was scared that I'd left the house without the phone. And these thoughts of, oh my goodness, if I get in a car accident, if I get a flat tire, what am I going to do? I don't have a phone. Oh my goodness, blah, 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 blah. All that started playing in my mind, right? Well, right away, I cut it off. Right? Cut it off and let it go. And I happened to be at a stoplight when I realized this, right? So at the stoplight, I cut it off and let it go. And I was like, get rid of that fear. I'm not going to allow the mind to have that fear. Well, the mind wanted to turn around because I was at a stoplight. I could have easily made a U-turn. I was really close to my house. I could have easily gone back and got the phone. And that's what I noticed that the mind wanted to do because of the craving. It was wanting this phone to be permanent. And I knew that no, this was not the wise thing to do. That if I gave the mind what it wanted, which was the phone, it's not going to have the opportunity to eliminate the craving. So I was planning to be outside for about an hour and a half that day. So I decided to keep on going in my day, to not turn around and go get the phone. I needed to train the mind to be just as peaceful and just as joyful when it's with the phone as when it's away from the phone. And if I turned around and went and got the phone, it's not actually solving the problem. The problem is that the mind was craving to have the phone permanent. It didn't like this impermanence, that I didn't have the phone. So if I would have turned around and got the phone, it wasn't actually allow the mind to develop the ability to be peaceful and joyful without the phone, understanding this impermanence. So instead of going outside for an hour and a half that day and doing the little tiny things that I was supposed to be doing, I extended my time outside. I went to go get some food. I went to the movies. I got some popcorn. I spent like 5 or 6 hours outside, putting the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in. It did not want to be in the situation of being without a phone. And I needed to train my mind that this was okay. I started reminding myself, when you were a kid, there was no such thing as mobile phones. You used to go outside all the time without a mobile phone. You would go outside all day long. I would go out like 7 a.m. in the morning, and my mom didn't see me until 6, 8 p.m. at night. I was gone. Right? I would go play in the woods. I'd be playing at my friends' houses. I'd be all over the place, right? She didn't see me for a long time. Nobody knew where I was. And I had to remind myself that, hey, you used to do this before. Why can't you do it now? Right? So I stayed out for a longer period of time. So then when I came home, I didn't just go run to the phone to see who had messaged me or what was going on. I just came back home and I sat down. And I usually don't watch TV much, but I sat down, I watched TV. I did other stuff. I didn't even go to the phone right away. And I was training my mind like, hey, you don't need this phone with you every single moment. But then eventually, of course, I went and picked up my phone and took a look at it and was like, all right, here's the phone. So then I waited about 2 or 3 days and I did it again. I intentionally left the phone at home this time. This was my plan, right? I intentionally left the phone at home. I went outside and I noticed that I wasn't fearful, but it was like this little awkwardness. It felt awkward to go outside without a phone. So I did that for about 2 or 3 days later. I went out without the phone. And again, I went outside, did a whole bunch of stuff, and then I came back home. And again, I didn't go run to the phone. I just did other things in the house. And then eventually I went and picked up the phone. Well, then I waited another 2 or 3 or 4 days and I did it again. And I did it again. And I kept doing it until I felt like I had eliminated the craving, that there was no more irritation or agitation or not even the slightest awkwardness related to leaving my phone at home. But then about 2 months later, because then I started taking my phone out again, right? So then about 2 months later, I accidentally left my phone at home again. And I was driving down the street and I reached for my phone and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, keep on going. No fear, no awkwardness, no nothing. Because I trained my mind 2 months prior. So this was like a situation where I was able to see that, I had eliminated the craving, right? So I had needed to put my mind in that situation where it didn't have the phone for 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And then when 2 months later, I didn't have the phone with me, I could see that the mind had eliminated the craving because there was no fear. I wasn't scared. I didn't even give it a second thought. I was just like, oh well, no phone. I'll get it later. And just kept on going in my day. Right? And this is how you'll know your mind has been liberated from that particular craving, desire, attachment, because there's no discontentedness. There's no red light that comes up at this point because you've eliminated the underlying cause and condition that is producing that fear or that awkwardness or that ickiness that's in the mind. And you'll know that it's completely eradicated. So this is a situation where I can share with you that I've done this particular thing. I'll give you some more examples. Sometimes students share with me that they're afraid of spiders or they're afraid of snakes, right? And what the unenlightened mind wants to do is it wants to push that stuff away. It thinks that I'll never see a spider. I'm never going to see a snake. I don't want to see this thing. And it'll try to push this thing out of your life. But you can't live in this world without seeing a spider. You're probably going to see a snake at some point, right? So if you have fear of these things, pushing it away doesn't actually solve the problem because the craving is still in the mind. What you would like to do is just the opposite. You would actually like to put the mind in the situation that it finds to be displeasurable. And now you desensitize the mind to this situation. So what I would encourage a student to do is look at pictures of spiders or snakes, whether it's in a magazine or on the internet or what have you. Start looking at pictures occasionally. And then you're going to notice this frustration or this fear or being scared arises in the mind. And you're going to need to cut that off and cut that off and cut that off, right? And you do that a few times until you can look at pictures of spiders and snakes and you're not afraid. Then you go to the next step. Maybe you go to a museum where they have spiders and snakes and you start looking at them, right? And you start checking them out, right? And maybe they're been preserved, maybe they're not even alive, but they still have those eyes, they still have those little hairs, and you look at them and you're like, I don't know about this, right? And you notice a little bit of fear coming up, and now you take it to the next step. You wait for a couple of weeks and now go out into a natural habitat where spiders are running around or snakes might be around, right? And you start seeing live snakes or live spiders. And slowly but surely, you desensitize the mind and you eliminate this craving, where you start not associating with spiders and snakes means something bad's going to happen to me. Because that's what the mind's experiencing, is that there's this conditioning in the mind that the mind's holding on, thinking that if I see a spider or I see a snake, that means something bad's going to happen to me. Right? And now the mind's holding on to that conditioning. And now with that clinging, it can't experience peace and joy. It's going to keep experiencing these discontent feelings. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to replace those experiences. You're trying to uncondition the mind. You're trying to purify the mind. And you're trying to show the mind that, hey, you can see spiders and you can see snakes. You're not causing them any harm. So therefore, harm's not going to come to you. This is the natural law of karma. You need to be able to see that very clearly, that, hey, the spider and the snake doesn't want to harm you because you're not harming the spider and the snake. So they're going to run away from you. That's what they're going to do, right? So the mind needs to be reconditioned, or it needs to be unconditioned. It needs to have these experiences where it can be around spiders, it can be around snakes, and it can see like, hey, nothing bad's going to happen. So it replaces these conditioning and these experiences that you've had in the past with new experiences where you can be peaceful and you can be joyful around things like a spider or a snake. You might have discontentedness around death, in the fear of death. You can actually contemplate your death. You can sit in contemplation. It's not meditation, it's reflection. You actually envision that you've died, right? Where you think that, you sit somewhere and you think in your own mind that maybe you've had a car accident, maybe there's been a terminal illness, maybe there's been something else, where you live this out like you're a fly on the wall, right? Like somebody's gone to your house or they've called your parents, maybe it's a doctor, a police officer, or something like this, and they've informed them that you've now died. And now you live this out. You're not aspiring to die. You're not planning your death. But in your own mind, with your eyes closed, you kind of live this out. And you convince your mind that you've actually died. And now you play that out. The funeral, the burial, or cremation, or whatever it is, you play that out over a 10 or 15 minute period of time. You might grieve. You might be sad. You might actually start crying as part of this. And if you do, you're actually doing this exactly the way you need to do it, because you're triggering that craving. You're triggering that craving for existence to be in this world. And now when the discontentedness is arising, you cut it off and let it go. And you cut it off and let it go. And you cut it off and let it go. And you might need to do this 2, 3, 4, 5 times over the course of multiple months, that you put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. And now you can train their mind to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. Because death is going to come visit you in one way or another. It's going to happen. And you can allow it to sneak up on you and catch you by surprise. Or you can confront death on your terms when you're ready, right? When your mind's pretty stable, you've been doing a good deal of meditation, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go in there and confront death, right? No need to let death sneak up on you. Confront death. Right? You can do this in your life and you'll see that you can get liberated from the fear of death. You can even do this for your relatives. If you notice that you have an attachment to your parents or other people, you can close your eyes and envision as if they have died, and you live that out where you're confronting their death. I did this with my mom and my grandmother on my own, of course, in my early 20s, where after I came out of that reflection, I realized that if they had truly died, there were certain things that I never said to them that I would have regretted not saying to them. And there were also certain things that I needed to hear from them that I never asked them these questions. So when I got done with this, I picked up the phone and I called them and I said, hey, Mom, I've always been meaning to ask you this. Or Mom, I've always been meaning to tell you this. So I had all those conversations so that after that, the next 25 years, it felt like bonus time. It felt like any time that I was spending with them was just bonus, because I'd already convinced my mind that they had died. And I'd already had all the conversations that I needed to have if they had died. So that when my mom actually called me in 2017 and she said, "Hey, David, I'm in the hospital. I was diagnosed with fourth stage pancreatic cancer. They've given me 1 week to live." I said, "Oh, okay, Mom, I understand. Thank you for letting me know, and be well, rest in peace, these kinds of things." That's all I said. I didn't say, "Oh my goodness, I've got all these things I haven't said to you. I need to tell you this. I need to tell you that." There was none of that, because I'd already had all those conversations with her, right? So it was just like, okay, I understand, because she's impermanent. She needed to die. Right? So there was no holding on. I had already eliminated my attachment to her. So this was part of eliminating my resentfulness towards my mom, is that I needed to eliminate my attachment. So I needed to train my mind through confronting her death. And this is what helped me to eliminate my attachment. So you can do that kind of thing. That would be a plan. That would be number 3. Right? And there's other potential plans that you might do depending on what your craving, desire, attachment is. So just going through this process again, number 1 is whenever discontentedness occurs, just cut it off and let it go. It shouldn't even be something you have to think about. Just cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. You just know that that's what you need to do. Then when your mind regains its stability, several minutes, several hours, several days later, look inward and reflect and try to figure out, what are your cravings, desires, attachments? It's oftentimes more than one. Then when you identify your cravings, desires, attachments, number 3 is put together a plan that's going to put the mind in the situation that it needs to be in order to eliminate that craving, desire, attachment. And then repeat. And where you need help, reach out to your teacher and I'll be here to help you. You can let me know, "Hey, I don't even know what my cravings are. Here's what happened. Can you help me identify my cravings?" Or, "Here's what happened. I think it's these cravings, but I'm not quite sure. Can you give me your perspective? Can you give me your thoughts?" And then I'll share with you what my thoughts are based on what you share. And I'll probably ask you some questions, right? So you can use it as a way to just get insight on what your cravings are, to come reach out to me, or you can use it as a way to confirm your current understanding of what it is you think your cravings actually might be. And then as you develop the skill, more and more you'll be able to do this on your own. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay, let me check online. Oh, you guys are online on the live stream. You haven't seen the PowerPoints. Okay. So if you guys would like to do a little group activity, I have this little group activity that we can do if you guys would like. Oh, Samantha's got a question. Let's see. Go ahead, Samantha.
I just wanted to ask about have less trouble cutting off contentedness with unpleasant feelings. Like, that seems to have been kind of an easy transition after studying with you. I think what I have trouble with is more with the pleasant discontentedness. And I don't know if I'm fooling myself, but I feel like lately, when I have what I would consider pleasant feelings coming up, I don't really consider it a pleasant feeling, but more of a gratefulness for something that I know is just a temporary situation. I'm not sure if I'm fooling myself or if I really am still having pleasant discontentedness. How do I tell the difference?
So if it's unconditioned happiness or like a mental state of gratitude, you won't actually be able to cut it off, because there's no cause or condition that's producing the unconditioned happiness. So the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned happiness, the gratitude, that mental state, there's no cause and condition that's producing it. So it actually can't be cut off and let go. This is why by the time you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. these conditional feelings, there's a condition that's causing it, which is the craving, desire, attachment. So you can cut it off and let it go because you're eliminating the cause and condition that's producing it. But these unconditioned mental qualities of happiness, of peace and joy and gratitude and loving kindness and compassion and all these different things, you can't actually cut them off and let them go if it's truly an unconditioned mental state.
Okay, well, I'll just use an example of, say, when I'm driving, and I'm at that intersection near Maya Mall, and I happen to hit the green light. I feel very grateful for that, but I know that's just kind of a temporary thing. I don't try to cut it off because I feel like the gratitude points to me not necessarily having pleasant discontentedness. So that's my question is, am I fooling myself, or am I truly just grateful and glad that it happened and I've moved on?
The way you'll know with something like that, if you think you're having gratitude for the green light, you need to observe the mind when you get a red light. Because if you get a red light and you experience any kind of annoyance or frustration or agitation, then you know that what you're experiencing with the green light is a conditioned pleasant feeling. Because if it's unconditioned gratitude, when you get a red light, you won't be frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But if it's a conditional pleasant feeling that you're experiencing with the green light, then when you get a red light, you're going to get the conditional painful feeling.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So I am kind of fooling myself. Like, it's good to be grateful, but yeah, like I would obviously prefer to have a green light than a red light. So that is conditional then.
Well, I prefer to have a green light versus a red light too, but sitting at a red light is no problem. It's like, okay, well, I'll just sit here, look around, see what's going on, check out people's motorbikes, look at the cars going by. You can be peaceful and joyful no matter what. But it's nice when you get a green light, but it's not a showstopper when you get a red light. You're not agitated or annoyed. So that's what you would like to look at.
I'm a bit like you. Like, I just kind of look around like, okay, I hit a red light. Like, this is, it'll turn green the next time. So, okay, well, I'll be more aware of what you suggested. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The thing with the pleasant feelings is that they're the bodily sensations associated with the pleasant feelings, because we talked about the 4 foundations of mindfulness yesterday. Those bodily sensations associated with the pleasant feelings are oftentimes a lot more challenging to distinguish, where the anger, the frustration, they produce a certain bodily sensations that you can clue into really readily. But the pleasant feelings, they tend to be lighter and they're pleasant. So you enjoy it, right? So usually it's kind of like tingling across the shoulders, the back of the neck, through the skull. So these aren't usually as distinguishable, and you really got to refine your mindfulness to be able to identify those bodily sensations. And there are no secrets related to the teachings of the Buddha. But if there was a secret, if there's like a real linchpin, if there's like a real thing to like clue somebody in on that's going to help them get to enlightenment more than anything else, of course, there's all the teachings that are going to get you to enlightenment. But the thing that people tend to overlook is the pleasant feelings, is to clue into eliminating the conditional pleasant feelings and being able to identify them as a bodily sensation. Because if you don't eliminate the conditional pleasant feelings, you're going to experience the conditional painful feelings. It's only a matter of time. As soon as you allow the mind to form a conditioned pleasant feeling, it is temporary. And when that condition changes, you will end up in the painful feelings. Oftentimes on the path to enlightenment, people really focus on the painful feelings a lot. That's why people use that word suffering instead of discontentedness. But one of the real secrets, which again, there aren't any secrets on the path to enlightenment, is to clue into those conditional pleasant feelings. Because if you can get your arms around that and eliminate the conditionality of those, not allowing the mind to form a conditioned pleasant feeling, then you're way ahead of the curve, because now you won't experience the conditional painful feeling. So this is something to really pay a lot of attention to.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so now I have something for you guys. If you would like to do this, is have a little group activity where if those of you guys here at the temple, those of you guys online, if you would like to share a bit about your particular situation of discontentedness, and we can discuss it and use it like a case study, and it'll help you to be able to identify your cravings, and other people will be able to learn from that as well. So a little bit of kind of like what Samantha was just doing, which is, talk about a situation where you've recently gotten excited or happy, or you've gotten angry or sad or frustrated, or maybe bored or lonely or shy. In a situation, you could say, okay, here's the feelings that I experienced, here's the situation, and here's what I think my cravings are, but I'm not sure, or I am sure, and can you help me? Or maybe you're like, hey, here's the situation, here's what occurred, and I don't even know what my cravings are. I don't even know what's producing these feelings. And then I will help you. I will ask you questions to understand. And then this way it'll give you some help, some ability to learn this skill, and it'll give everyone else an opportunity to hear too, so that together you guys can hear different situations to be able to uncover and identify your individual cravings. And then once you've identified the cravings, then you can start talking about a particular plan that you might decide to implement, and you can come up with that and you can share what that is, and then I can help you with that too, to understand a particular plan. And if you hear 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these, it'll actually help you to develop this skill. So is this something you guys would like to do? Anybody would like to volunteer to share any kind of situation that you've recently had where you've been discontent? No? Okay, we don't have to do it. It's up to you guys if you guys would like to do it. Sure. Can you get a mic there? Yeah, then they'll hear you online. Maybe the feeling is shyness in your class. Why am I so shy?
So I was, when I see this, I'm like, oh, deep thoughts. But then this is so silly. But yesterday I had gone to the gym and I had gotten splashed from Songkran, which wasn't the problem. That wasn't what made me upset. I had taken off my dress and hung it inside the gym to dry. And then when I was leaving the gym, I forgot it and I left it in the dressing room, okay, fine, whatever. And I got home and I'm like, oh man, I left my dress in the dressing room, and I didn't bring many things here to Thailand. So I'm like, oh, it's my favorite dress. It means a lot to me, as I'm, all this stuff. So let me just call them. I called my boyfriend. I'm like, oh, what do I do? He's like, I just call them and see, otherwise, we'll go over and talk to them. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to get the dress back. Already it's a caper. Already it's a big deal. So I called them and said, hey, I describe it. And the woman says, no, it's not there. So I'm like, based on object permanence, it has to be there because no one took it. It's not like somebody went in and stole the dress. And she's like, well, I'm telling you, I don't see it. It's not there. She looked a couple times and then she starts saying, well, maybe the housekeeper took it or maybe a customer took it. And I'm going, this goes against everything I know of the culture of the gym and my experience in Chiang Mai. But I'm still willing to let this be a possibility because I'm angry that that I forgot this dress. And then my mind wasn't in it. And, now I'm mad because I'm mad at myself and all of these things. So I get on another motorbike, go through Songkran, get splashed, all this stuff, go back to the gym, ask them oh, can I go check, for the dress? And they're like, yeah, no, it's not here with the cleaner. We asked her, she doesn't have it. Nobody's seen it. Clearly a customer's taken it, and I'm like, it doesn't really make sense, but I'm going to go check. So I go back and it's exactly where I said it was. So, which, of course it was going to be, but then I had gone back out and I wanted to speak to the woman who told me that she checked a bunch of times and it wasn't there, just to say, hey, I appreciate you having gone. And I don't even know why I needed that. But so all of these things. And then I'm thinking, so there were so many things that were, signals of attachment there, like attachment to a material object, not wanting to be uncomfortable on the ride back to the gym to get it. The inability to just say, well, it's in the ether. I wasn't meant to keep it. It's a piece of fabric. It's not for me. Let it go. Not being able to do that. Going and, wanting to show them oh, look, I was right. Thinking, being attached to the culture of security and safety that I found here and feeling like that had been violated and being upset about that. I'm calling somebody else to enlist them to get them discontented about it as well. All of these things. So I was trying to think about what actually upset me. Was it the theft, the idea of theft, my own negligence, or my frustration with myself about needing this piece of fabric that I've come through so much being in Thailand, and this is actually a relic of a past life. Why didn't I just let it go then? Because it's nice and I feel nice in it. Like there's so many things. It's such a simple thing, but I did really think deeply about how this one action like was bringing up all of these other pieces of attachments and things that I'm aware of needing to let go of, but in that struggling process, then getting frustrated with myself. Why haven't I come further? But it's okay. All of this stuff was happening. So I don't know.
This is a great example. Okay. So what do you feel like your craving, desire, attachments were? Because there was multiple, as you see, because whenever you have like really strong emotions, spanning a large period of time, there's often more than one craving, desire, attachment. But what are some of the ones that you were identifying? You were kind of talking a little bit, but let's just hone in on it.
So vanity, attachment of this is the illusion of ownership. This is mine. I bought it. It belongs to me. I want it because I think that when I wear it, I feel like attractive to others. So vanity, external approval, feeling violated by a theft. Like when I know that the culture here, that would be so unusual, but allowing there to be mistrust as a way to kind of continue to fool it, to justify my anger. Like, well, somebody took it. They must be a bad person. It's mine. So yeah, illusions of ownership, vanity, needing to get angry about something. I was physically exhausted. I hadn't slept enough because I had been perseverating over some obsessive thoughts about something else 2 nights before. So all of these things come to bear out in this one small incident, and how easily all of this like network of depth was triggered by this one like dress that, should I have just let it go, walked away from the whole thing? But I feel like there was value in having to go through the process. It gave me more to go home and think about it. And I woke up this morning and saw it, and I was like, oh, the dress. Like, I can't ever wear it again because of all these things that it reminds me of now. But then even that. So, but I think that the craving for security, feeling like that had been violated, the vanity, security, and then embarrassment at having been wrong, but wanting to be wrong. So ego.
Were you attached to the dress?
No, I was attached to the experiences that I associated with this dress.
Okay, the memories.
The memory.
And the dress represented that for you.
The visceral feeling of putting this dress on and remembering, oh, it's time to go to a party now, that kind of an idea.
Okay, here's another way to say it. What was the mind craving to be permanent? What was it wanting?
Security.
You wanted that dress too, right?
Yeah,
That's what you wanted.
I did.
If you would have remembered to take that dress with you, none of this would have happened.
That's correct.
So your mind was holding on to this dress.
Yeah, it symbolized all of these other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the cascading effect happened.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what do you think would be a good plan to train your mind to let go of this dress?
Giving it away.
Okay, that's one option.
Just
you could do
saying, like, taking it somewhere and, giving it to anyone. Like, oh, hi, I've washing it, cleaning it, wrapping it nicely, giving it to somebody. Just, oh, I thought you might enjoy this, and just leave it alone. And not even somebody that I would see them wearing it. Could be like my landlord's wife, or just anybody. Just, oh, does anybody want this? Putting it out on the street. Like, just, hey, anybody want, just, and leaving it, letting it go entirely. But I think more so it was the feeling of security that I felt like I had built a safe, secure life. And the minute that seemed to be violated, I went into like hyper defensive mode. So that, I think, is the deeper issue of maybe not really feeling secure. Did I make the wrong choice to come here? Is this really a safe place? Do I really feel safe in myself here? Am I not doing enough to bolster my self-security and my identity? All of those things came to bear.
So what that's called is clinging to your perceptions, because you had an experience where you left your dress and this person went to go look for it and they couldn't find it. And then you form the perception that this place isn't safe.
Yes.
And now my security is not safe.
And
what a perception is a view or opinion about how things seem to be. Well, another way we might say that is an assumption. So the mind will cling to its perceptions of how the world seems to be. And then you start telling yourself that story over and over and over again. And when in reality, none of that stuff actually happened. Your mind would just kind of clung to all of that stuff.
Right.
So this dress, so usually what happens is there's these multiple layers, right? And you would like to start peeling back the layers. And if you're going to choose to give away your dress, that's one way to eliminate your craving to this dress. But let's just say this dress was like $10,000 and there's just, it would financially be impractical for you to get rid of this dress. What are some other options you could do? Because you don't have to get rid of a dress in order to eliminate an attachment to it. Just like you don't have to eliminate a relationship, and I don't have to eliminate my mobile phone in order to eliminate my attachment. But what are some other options you could do? Not you, whatever you choose to do is up to you. But just as a nature of this exercise and this case study, what are some other options besides giving it away of things that you could do?
I could choose to examine my perception and have some like loving compassion for myself and say, don't beat yourself up over getting angry about this thing. Accept that I felt violated, accept that that's a product of some other things that in my life that I need to take care of, getting sleep, taking care of my mental state, those kinds of things. Examining that instead. The dress is the surface. That's like the tip of the iceberg, right? And then everything else is more important. So I think, reflecting on like my sense of purpose here, if I could so easily be rocked by something so on the surface, there's clearly some other personal work that I need to do to ground myself in my own sense of self-identity and self-security, so that these external things that are not meant with any harm so that I don't leap to, they're out to get me, the world is out to get me, I haven't protected myself enough, I haven't bolstered my own sense of equanimity, of neutrality, in order to see that the world does not bode ill for me, nor does it bode well. It simply is, and to not take things personally.
Yeah, that's all really good insight for you and good wisdom for you to have on board. But in terms of the dress and eliminating the attachment to the dress, can you think of any other things? And if you can just say, I don't know, and I'll share some ideas with you. But I just thought I would check with you to see if you can think of something with the dress that you could do to train your mind to let it go.
Not at the moment.
Okay. So giving it away is one option. Surely that's an option. You could also, if you have someone that borrows clothing, sometimes people do this where they'll like borrow people's clothing. This is another way, like you letting somebody borrow it. Like say it was a $10,000 dress and giving it away would be a financial burden. You could let someone borrow it and then let them wear it. And then seeing other people wearing it, the mind has to let it go. Right. So this is another option that you could do. So I'm just interested in exploring that with you, so you didn't feel like you have to completely eliminate something like an object from your life, because there's other ways to train your mind to let things go, that you don't have to eliminate the phone, you don't have to eliminate the computer, but sometimes sharing the things that you have with other people and letting other people use it, this is helpful to train your mind to let it go.
Like practicing generosity as a way to understand, like there is no, like combating that idea of ownership.
Yeah, because in both of those examples of giving it away or sharing it, that's generosity, right? And that's what's training your mind to let this go in this particular example. So yeah, that's perfect to be able to do that. And then what you'll notice is by letting that go, however you choose to do that, all those other cascading effects that you uncovered, those will start to clear up more and more and more. But just be attentive to the unenlightened mind clinging to its perceptions, because this is something that the unenlightened mind will often do, is cling and hold on to these perceptions of the world. And now the world is a dark place because of what's going on in one's own mind. So this whole story that got told inside your mind, you've ultimately figured out that it wasn't true, that nobody actually stole your dress. And even if they did, that's not an indication of you or who you are as a person or Thailand as a whole. There was just one particular person that chose to take that dress in that situation. And that doesn't mean any of that other stuff, but the mind will tend to cling to those kinds of things. So where you see the mind doing those things, you would like to cut that off too and say, no, that's just a story you're trying to tell yourself. That's not true. You don't need to be down on Thailand or down on this or down on that. You don't need to think that way. So, but the mind doesn't know how to do that by itself. So the person, Liz, there's this body, there's this mind, and then there's the person, Liz, that it has to look at the mind and be like, silly mind, come on. Nobody stole your dress. And even if they did, okay, whatever, right? They got the dress. That doesn't mean that you're insecure, that there isn't safety here. It just means that somebody chose to take the dress, and that's unfortunate. And they're going to experience their karma as a result of that. But then for you, you can maintain your peacefulness if you're not clinging to the dress and if you're not clinging to any perceptions about the whole experience.
And thank you for that. The thing that made me, as I sort of slept on it and woke up this morning, was that I had enlisted other people to sort of help me fuel this anger, pull them into, I called my boyfriend, this and he's like, okay, all right, let me help you. Yeah. But taking somebody out of their stasis and inviting them into a situation that did create discontent, not being more mindful of that. What am I inviting them into? He's going to try to solve this problem. He's going to get upset on my behalf because he is protective, and I know that. So wanting to elicit that to feel, again, security, value for this misstep. So that was the effect on others is really something that, and the woman that I said, go look for the dress, I was not like, oh, would you mind? I was like, my dress is stolen, so those things also, that was a bigger problem, actually.
I'm sure you've heard the saying, misery loves company.
Yeah.
It's true, right? So you were feeling miserable and you're like, I need some company here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So what we do here in Thailand is whenever we're dealing with an issue, we know that it's in our own mind and we're not interested in impacting others. So practicing that intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm to others, what you'll come to learn is that, okay, whenever you're experiencing a particular thing, it would be unwise to grab somebody else and try to get them all riled up into your situation. If you need advice or if you need input, that's one thing, right? And you need some thoughts. But probably what you could have done in that situation to help you is just to take a breath, is sit down, you're like, you know what? It's a dress. It's just some fabric, like you said. That's great. A way to think about it is it's just a piece of fabric. Let me just sit here and calm down and then think through your decisions. Because in the unenlightened state, the mind tends to be reactive, and you reacted and just call boyfriend. He's my safety. He's my security. Let me call boyfriend, right? Where what you like to do is respond in these situations. And that's going to need a calm mind. So the first thing you do when you see your mind doing this, calm your mind down. And then once your mind's calm, then you think through what's the best thing to do here. You know what? Let me just get on my motorbike and go over there and see if it's there. That's the best thing to do. It's just go over there, go get wet, go drive through the city, and let me see what happens. Or call like you did. You can do those kinds of things. But getting upset or impacting others, this is what you'll learn to not do. But right now, you're still learning. So, of course, these things happen, and you learn from each one of these situations that you're not going to be perfect from the beginning. In each one of these kinds of situations, you gain wisdom and insight from them, and that helps you to do better next time. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, is using it as a way to build wisdom and be reflective to be able to handle it differently in the future.
Yeah, it reminded me, just in closing, of they talk about the attachment styles in psychological approaches and cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that. So there's anxious, avoidant. So it was a reminder of although working on ancient attachment style, it's still there in pieces, and little flare-ups like this are great reminders to dial it all the way back, settle way down, so that there isn't a major issue with an interpersonal relationship. This was an anxious attachment to a thing that signifies still work to be done under the surface. So I was ultimately grateful for it.
This also helps you confirm the Four Noble Truths, right? You can see the truth that, yes, craving does indeed lead to discontentedness, and my mind calls this itself. You can independently reflect and see the truth for yourself. So these are great situations to build your wisdom, and it sounds like that's what you're doing with it. But now okay, in the future, you didn't know this then, but in the future, what you can do is, let me back up, is in the future, you can, when the discontentedness occurs, right away, you realize you don't have your dress and the discontentedness arises, cut it off and let it go, cut it off and let it go, cut it off. Try to regain your stability of mind. And it might take you several minutes or hours to be able to do that. And then with a clear mind, then you start thinking through, what am I craving here? What am I really wanting? The dress. I'm holding on to that dress. I'm wanting the dress to be permanent. And now you move to step 3. What can I do to train your mind to let this go? I can give away the dress. I can let people borrow it. I can share it with other people. These are all ways that you can train your mind to let this go. And then now you'll be more liberated because of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else, either here or online, that would like to share? Thank you, Liz. Yeah, Rachel, I see you leaning towards the microphone. Yeah.
No, I am interested in your insight.
Uh-huh.
I kind of briefly spoke with David a little bit this morning, but I never got into the situation. But during our loving kindness meditation yesterday, I was starting to remember like situations, I guess, from my childhood that I just haven't thought of in a while. So I realized I have the discontentedness feeling of resentment and anger to certain members of my family and certain situations that I guess have happened to me in the past. So I would like your opinion on what maybe attachments or cravings I still have. But I think I have a craving or desire for people to act a certain way, or how I perceive, let's just say my father, how I perceive a father should be. I have a craving or desire for maybe other people to do like inner work, and I'm maybe upset or that they're not, right? Like, and maybe that they're not vocalizing apologies or taking ownership, or right? I think I have a strong craving for someone else to just be how I am wanting them to be. And I think that's what's causing me a lot of pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
yes.
Makes a lot of sense. This is the challenge with relationships, and this is why relationships are not harmonious, right? Because in the unenlightened state, there's those cravings of wanting this person to be a certain way, and they're just not that way. So this process here is applies probably about 80 or 90% of the times that you'll experience various cravings, desires, attachments. In terms of number 1 and number 2, you should always do that, right? Anytime discontentedness comes up, cut it off and let it go, cut it off and let it go, cut it off and let it go. And then be reflective. What am I attached here? What am I craving? And you identified those. Those are the things you've identified. But in terms of number 3, in this particular example, you can't actually do anything because it's another person choosing to do something. And the fact is that you actually aren't going to have to do anything because they're going to continue to do those things, right? They're going to continue to not be doing the things that your mind's craving for them to do. So as you're around them, this will actually be the experience that you need of, like, when you're around your dad, he's going to be doing things that you would prefer, or that you don't want him to do, right? That he's going to do things in a way that is opposite of what you think a father should be, perhaps. I don't know if he's still doing those things, but if he is, it's going to automatically happen. You're not going to need to induce that yourself, because that's what number 3 is talking about. It's kind of inducing these things, like leaving my phone at home. I needed to induce that. Or like Liz choosing to give away the dress. She's inducing that in order to make it happen. But in this example, 10, 20% of the times, certain cravings, you can induce them, but they will happen naturally on their own. And you just need to be aware that when they do happen, to do number 1 and number 2. Just keep doing number 1 and number 2, number 1 and number 2. And just realize that, okay, he's doing things his way. And that's okay. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's his way. And I can just love him regardless. Right? Yeah. So you've got those accurate. Those are the cravings, right? The mind's wanting dad to be a certain way, and he's not going to be that way. Yeah, he's on his own growth path. He's on his own journey. He may not say sorry. He may not give you hugs and kisses and all the other things that maybe you feel like he's not doing. I don't know what it is that you feel like he's not doing, but he's not going to necessarily do those things. But one thing I can share with you, because when I was growing up, like I really wanted my mom to hug me and kiss me. Like I never got that growing up. Like I can't even remember a time where my mom really said, "I love you." Growing up, like I never heard that from my mom growing up at all, to the point where I was in my 30s. I called her up one time and asked her, like, "Do you love me?" Because I don't even know in my 30s whether or not she loved me or not, because she had never vocalized that. So I always wanted her to hug me and kiss me and tell me that she loved me and these kinds of things, because I never experienced that growing up as a child. So if there's certain things like that, you should never expect that the other person's going to do those things. But one of the things that you can do is you can do them. One of the things that I started doing is I started hugging my mom, and I started telling her that I loved her. And then she started doing that with me. I did that with my son too, because growing up, I knew that I didn't hear that from my mom at all growing up. And I wasn't interested in my son growing up and not knowing whether or not I loved him or not, and not receiving hugs from me. So I was interested in being very clear in his mind that his dad loved him by hearing it, and then by also experiencing me hugging him. So from very early in his life, when he was an infant, even though he couldn't talk, I would hug him and I would kiss him and I would tell him that I love him, even though he couldn't talk. And I never taught him to tell me that he loves me. But I notice now that there's occasions where, like, I'll say, "All right, good night, Bailan, have a good night's sleep." He's like, "Okay, Dad, I love you." He would say it on his own. So this is your karma. Whatever you put out, this is what's going to come back to you. So because since he was an infant, I've hugged him and kissed him and told him that I love you, he also does that back with me. Not because I want it, not because I expect it, but just because that's what I put out, that's what's coming back. So if there's certain things in your relationships with your parents or your dad that you feel like is lacking or missing, if those are certain things that you can be doing, this will actually help you to then experience that coming back to you. And hugging and kissing and "I love yous" are a common thing that sometimes parents don't say, depending on how they grew up, because their mind's conditioned in a certain way based on how they grew up, and they're parenting you in the way that they were parented. So now you're choosing to do something different. And if it means that you hug and kiss and say "I love you," even though it's kind of awkward, like the first few times that I hugged my mom, it was really weird. It was really awkward because I had never experienced that. The first time I said "I love you" to her, it was very weird. It felt very awkward. But the more I did it, the more natural it felt. And then she started being that way more with me. And I started noticing she was that way with other people too. She started being that way with her grandkids and with other people. So that's one thing I can share with you, that if you do things, this will help your dad to learn that. And you're not doing it because you wanted him to do it. You're not doing it because you're trying to teach him, but you just know that it's a wise decision to maybe hug your parents every once in a while and say "I love you" and things like this. I don't know what that's just an example, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Could you get the mic?
I share with my kids also, because we are live long distance, long way each other. A lot of time I talk to them on a FaceTime. I always, when finish the sentence, I love you. And more I use it, you know. And even with grandkids too, and they respond back, "I love you too." And they like we regularly, you know, "I love you, Grandma," you know, they say "I love you back. And
yeah, with this kind of thing, one thing I'll share, since this is a topic that we're starting to talk about, is whenever I say "I love you," I don't expect a "I love you" back.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you expect it back and it doesn't come, you'll be frustrated and agitated. So there are times when I would say "I love you" to my mom, and like the first probably 20 times that I did it, she never said "I love you" back. Right? She never said that back. Even my son, when I first started saying "I love you" to him, he couldn't even speak when I first started saying it to him. So he couldn't say it back to me. Right? So this is actually really good training for the mind to not expect it to come back to you. Because you're whenever you're practicing something, it should be with no expectation whatsoever. So people oftentimes do respond with "I love you too," but just don't expect it. And that'll preserve your mind to stay peaceful and joyful. Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys would like to share? Anything else, things you would like to talk about? Any help you guys need to uncover your attachments and your cravings and learn this process? Let's see. Okay, here's something from Hugo. Thank you for the opportunity. How can one let go when it is obvious that the other part is taking advantage of one's generosity? Okay, so it's not possible for someone to take advantage of your generosity. This is a big misunderstanding in the world. If you're practicing true generosity, you're practicing the giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. If you're practicing generosity with an expectation that they will only take a certain amount or that they will give you something back as a result, you're not practicing pure generosity, and that's why you're feeling that you're being taken advantage of. So if you don't have any expectations and you're the one making the decision to practice generosity. Nobody's forcing you to do that. Nobody's convincing you to do that. It's your choice to practice generosity. And if you practice pure generosity without any expectations, it's not possible for anybody to take advantage of you because you're practicing the giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. But in the unenlightened state, people aren't practicing pure generosity oftentimes, and they have certain expectations, and that's where people feel like I am being taken advantage of. But that's just because there's certain expectations around the generosity. So if you drop your expectations around your generosity and you just give and share without any expectation, then you can't be taken advantage of because you're only ever doing something that you're choosing to do. It's not somebody else convincing you to do that or forcing you to do that. It's your choice. So if I give my neighbor half a bundle of bananas, they're not taking advantage of me because I'm giving them half a bundle of bananas. And if they never give me anything back, that's okay, because I've given them this half a bundle of bananas without any expectation of anything in return. They're not taking advantage of my generosity because my generosity doesn't have any strings attached. There's no expectations with that. So that's how you ensure that your mind is protected and that you're not being taken advantage of, because it's not possible. So right now it sounds like you're not practicing pure generosity because you have certain expectations around your generosity, and that's why you're feeling taken advantage of. But if you eliminate those expectations, you won't have those feelings. Okay? All right. So it looks like everybody that was interested to share has had an opportunity to share. It's basically 11:45. So let's take our hour-and-a-half lunch. And when we come back, I'm going to teach you guys the Brahma Viharas, the 4 healthy mental states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So we'll get back together at 1:15. That's when we're going to start, right? And we'll probably finish up a little bit early today because this particular part of the teachings is actually really straightforward, very easy to teach. We're going to start with meditation at 1:15, and then I'm going to move into the 4 healthy mental states, explaining to you the symptoms that you'll experience when your mind doesn't have these fully cultivated. And then I'll explain to you what these things are, what these mental states are, and how to implement them into your life to be able to cultivate the mind and eradicate the certain symptoms that are being experienced because of not having these in the mind. So enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you in an hour and a half at 1:15. Okay? Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Thank you.